Well, good morning, Matthew Wells. Thank you for freeing up some time for us for a short chat. And of course, it's extremely unfortunate that the circumstances have made it impossible for you to be with us in the Netherlands at our conference. And as we speak, my latest information is that the hurricane, the march of Sandy through the east coast, has destroyed a lot of trees, a lot of houses.
Right.
43 people lost their lives, and over 8 million people have no electricity. Can you tell us how you have experienced the last days just as a citizen of New York City?
Yeah, well, thank you, Jan-Willem. Firstly, I want to say, I'm extremely sorry that I'm, not there today at the conference. My bag was half packed. I worked very hard on my presentation and my workshops, and it's very disappointing. And I want to say that I'm really sorry that I'm not able to be there. The conference looked fantastic, and I was very much looking forward to it. So I apologize to everyone, and I hope that you understand as tree people that I was simply unable to be there for your conference and the workshop. So I just wanted to say I apologize, and I appreciate the understanding and the compassion of Jan-Willem and his team in understanding this. It's I know it creates them a lot of work, so I apologize, and I am so very sorry about that. In terms of what's happened here in New York, we have in the city over the last couple of years, we've been hit by Hurricane Irene last year, and the year before that we had a tornado. And both of these events caused an awful lot of damage to the city in terms of the tree population. Over the last few days, sorry about that, we have been preparing for this. We knew Hurricane Sandy was coming up. Within the city, we have what we call an Office of Emergency Management, or and it's really an agency that does nothing apart from prepare the city for emergencies, whether that's storm emergencies, whether it's, say, a pest and disease emergency, whether that's just a power outage, whatever it may be, anything that's kind of a citywide crisis, they handle. Because of this storm event, and it was predicted that it would cause a lot of tree damage, forestry is, in terms of the Parks Department, one of our core duties as the Parks Department, and the fact that we are responsible for all the street trees and the park trees, is to be as ready as we can be. We knew that Hurricane Sandy was coming. We all hoped that it was going to veer off somewhere into the Atlantic Ocean, but it didn't. It kind of came straight for us because it hit that cold front coming down, I think, from Canada. So as part of our role, what we're doing is we're attending the Office of Emergency Management. They activate what we call the EOC, which is the Emergency Operations Control. We have to report there. So we had like 4 or 5 people there from the Parks Department. And we have to get ready. So we've called in a lot of contract crews. We had 50 contract crews waiting for us, stationed around the city. So that's around 35 35 loader crews. So like forestry trucks to load debris, and about 15 bucket trucks, which are sort of aerial towers. Then we also had our own forestry operations. Then we have to call in all our staff. We have to train people to get them ready to do inspections. We're having people sleeping in our forestry offices overnight, and it's difficult because they have to leave their families at home, and they have to now be an emergency type worker. So, and then we're working with fire, police, the electricity companies, sanitation, DOT. So we're making sure that all the relationships are in place to deal with the predicted debris, and then we have to kind of sit tight and then see what happens.
Yeah, I don't think it's easy to be prepared for a superstorm like this, isn't it?
It's very challenging because you're trying to predict what's going to happen. As soon as you call in contract crews to help, they're costing a lot of money. As to have a bucket truck in is like $2,000 a day on a 12-hour shift. For a loader crew is somewhere in the region of $3,000 a day. So immediately that we called 50 crews in, it's costing the city $180,000 a day. Yeah. So, you better hope that they're doing something to help, work. The other thing we're having to do as well before the storm hits, Jan-Willem, is we're having to set up contracts to make sure that we have the contracts are big enough, depending on what happens, and also that we have other contracts around the agency for like repairing beaches, for securing damaged buildings, and also for repairing sidewalks. Street trees come down, they cause sidewalk damage. So we had to make sure that we were working with our Department of Design and Construction and Department of Transport, that they have the contracts ready that we can pass them where we've had trees come down, we've got records of sidewalk damage, and then they can go ahead and get that damage repaired. So we had to prepare, and then obviously Sandy came through and it gave us a lot of damage already, and we're only still getting that damage in now.
Yeah. Now it's only 24 hours since the storm left New York. Is there already any information about the damage on your tree population?
Well, because we had two big events, particularly Hurricane Irene, we as a forestry department, we've worked very hard at trying to be as prepared as possible. So one thing that we've developed is we've developed what we call Storm Mobile. And I was actually going to talk about it when I was at the conference. But Storm Mobile is a way that when someone calls in, so a member of the public calls in that they have tree damage, that gets relayed directly to our inspectors in the field who have a handheld Toughbook device, Panasonic Toughbook,
yes.
So they can see that request coming to them live. They can then open that request, go to that location. It's map-based, generate a work order if needed, and then that work order goes straight to our forestry crews. So just at the moment, we've had, from members of the public via 311, we've had around 9,234 calls and that's coming from members of the public, and that number is of 7 o'clock today, so 23 minutes ago.
Wow.
And most of those are in Queens. We've had 4,800 requests in Queens, which is one of our biggest boroughs. And the next one is Brooklyn, which is 2,381. We've got in the field, we're now working on a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. shift. We also have to have people at the OEM overnight. So these reports are coming from the overnight shift. But of those requests, we have so far inspected around 1,500 of them. So we've done 1,500 inspections. Actually, I take that back. We've closed out 3,000 of those because some of those are duplicates.
Yes.
So our system allows us to close out duplicates as well. So we have around 6,000 of those, 6,700 of those requests are still open, waiting for us to go and inspect them. We've closed out a little over, about 2,400 have been inspected and dealt with. And so far, and this is a mixture of places where we've got service requests where we've inspected them, and also field pickup. So we still go to locations, and if there's, even though there hasn't been a request, we'll still generate a work order. We currently have 2,379 work orders in our system of work to be done. Of those, we've only closed 330 so far. But, this data is all pretty much live coming from the field. So not only can we take the requests in the field and inspect them, we can also generate work orders in the field, send them to our forestry offices, and then we can also close work orders in the field as well. So this system allows us to be as live as possible. Obviously, one issue that we have when we have this amount of tree damage is that, elected officials, the mayor, our commission, they want to know what's going on. And we have to give as real-time information as possible. Of those, just so we know, of those 2,379 work orders, we're thinking that we have around about, I think it's 65% of those are probably going to be for trees down. So we've already got probably 1,600, 1,700 work orders just for trees down at the moment. In terms of our responsibilities, one thing that we do in risk management is that we have to make sure that we prioritize our inspections and we prioritize our work orders. So as a citywide operation, we have an agreement and through our preparedness plans that we deal with life safety issues first, So trees on cars, trees blocking streets, anything that is either hurting someone or causing an accident or has the potential to. And if it's a blocked street, and even though it might not be, there's no human damage by the tree falling over, if it means that a fire truck or an ambulance can't get to the person on the street because of this, that's a life safety issue. So we're focusing on those issues, opening up our streets first. Then we move to dealing with electricity issues with wires, where we've got sparking wires. So we're going to work with Con Edison and our utility companies. Then it's trees on houses. We're having to get in a crane to pull those off. And then we go to stuff like just debris down and managing debris, because once we've got the tree issues dealt with, it really these sort of events become about days and days and days of getting debris off the streets, processing it, and getting rid of the debris down to composting sites and places like that. So it's, as you can see, logistically, what we're doing now is we're trying to get all the inspections done, get our crews out in the field to deal with the high risk priority work orders that we know that we have, like blocked streets, and anything that it causes a direct risk. And then after that, it's working with people like our sanitation department, our Department of Transport, to actually get the debris to wood processing sites to get it ground up and then get it moved out to composting sites. So it's all about logistics now. It's about maintaining records. It's about reporting. We're going to be able to claim money back from FEMA, so it's collecting those records as we go for overtime, vehicle use, chainsaw use, whatever it may be, contract crew use, volume of debris dealt with, so we can have those records to get reimbursement. And then it's about updating our system so we can report pretty much as live as we can from the field to show that the parks department is doing everything they can to get the city back to normal.
Yeah. Do you have to increase the number of contractors who are working at the moment, or can you handle it?
We're at the moment, 50 contract crews is a lot. For the last hurricane, I think we had up to, at one point we had 70 crews or 80 crews. Our highest point ever was for the tornadoes, I think, where I had 100 crews in. So we've got like 50 crews. It's increasing every day by a few. I think what we prefer to stay is that's more of a manageable level. As soon as you get too many contract crews in the field, it's very difficult to keep track of what's going on. So we prefer to work at a more steady pace with 50 contract crews plus all our own. So we've actually got about 80 crews in the field, plus we've got minor crews that are just sort of like, people with chainsaws just doing minor cleanup work. But we have like probably 80 crews that are either using bucket trucks or aerial towers or loaders, like forestry loaders. So that's an awful lot of equipment to have in the field. And I think because we have the ability to deal with this stuff in a much more, this is the first time we've had Storm Mobile available to us, but because we can work pretty much live from the field, we can prioritize much quicker, which means that we need less crews wandering around picking up stuff, because we can be very much more direct in where we're sending these crews and dealing with the high priority stuff first. So my sense is that we will need more grinding stations to deal with the debris that's being delivered to us. And we might need a couple of tree cranes to help pull trees off houses. But I think that the 50 crews is probably pretty good at the moment, plus our own. So we have about, like I said, we had about 80 to 90 forestry crews in the field working at the moment.
Yeah. Now, of course, you are invited for next year's conference, so maybe you can give us an update and about how it works. Right now.
Yeah, and I would love to. And again, it would be an absolute pleasure to come next year. I apologise for not being there this year. I think you've probably all seen the images on the screen on TV. And even last night, I was just saying I drove from the tip of Manhattan, the very bottom of Manhattan, to 42nd Street, which is probably a third of the island, and there's still no electricity. And this is the city that never sleeps, and it's pitch black. Apart from police cars, so it's very scary here. I worked the overnight on Sunday night, and then I was down at OEM, or our Office of Emergency Management, all last night. But when I came back here, just as the tornado was kind of hitting and someone had taken over from me, just the building opposite us, we live on the 23rd floor, me and my wife, it lost 400 bricks came off that building. So that building started to fall apart, and no one can do anything about it. Everyone, because no one can respond. It's 23 floors up. Nothing's going to get up there, and there's bricks falling on people's homes and on a church. It's very distressing. It's very scary. And just outside on the street, we have an awful lot of damage still to be done. It's not just tree damage; it's everything's been damaged, and it's very scary to be in the city. Over the next couple of days we'll get a better idea. But we've got requests coming in. I suspect at the end of this we might get as many as 20,000 forestry requests.
Yeah.
And we probably have 7,000, 8,000, maybe 10,000 trees destroyed, plus all the limbs that have fallen off and all the debris that's been generated. So this is it's a huge effort now, and we'll be cleaning this up for probably at least 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe something about your presentation. Your presentation would have been about using urban forestry research in New York City, and the participants have the Dutch translation in their conference brochures, so they can read it. But maybe you can give us a very short summary about your presentation, and especially how you value the trees of New York.
It's my presentation, and it's I looked at it's funny, I was looking at iTree as part of my preparation, and I saw that iTree has already been used in Holland. I think there's like 55 projects that have already been done using the iTree suite. The thrust of my presentation was to make sure that we as urban foresters or urban tree managers, that we are using research not only to get resources by showing that trees are an extremely important component of the urban environment because of their abilities to clean the air, help collect stormwater, reduce electricity use or energy costs, increasing property value, all that stuff that we know about as urban foresters, but having the ability to quantify that and showing that trees actually do a good job in the urban environment of helping improve the urban environment. And compared to many other environmental solutions, they're an extremely good deal. We believe in New York that for every $1 we invest in trees, we are getting about $5 back in environmental benefits on an annual basis. So as urban foresters, it's taking that data, taking those quantified environmental benefits, and then using those to be able to speak to policymakers, urban planners, to show that trees are an essential part of the urban environment and they have to be invested in. And that's kind of what my presentation was how we've done that in New York, and then talk about, because we were able to do that, we were able to get a lot of funding for a project that was a sustainability plan from the mayor called Plan NYC. It was released in 2007. We were able to get massive amounts of funding to do tree planting, 220,000 street trees to be planted. So that's around about $220 million worth of funding over 10 years. Reforestation, I think it's 2,000 acres of urban forests, so another $150 million worth of investment over 10 years. And it's really to tell you a little bit about how we've gone with those funds. Obviously we've had an economic crisis, so we've lost some of that money, but we're still pushing on. And, how those two projects feed into our Million Tree program. Yep. What we've achieved so far, we've already, reached the 50% goal of planting these trees in our streets, of reforestation efforts. I think we've planted a little over 100,000 street trees, and we've planted around 350,000 trees through a reforestation. No, 320,000 trees through reforestation. But also I wanted to talk about, it's not just about getting resources, it's about us as urban foresters making sure that we use those resources in the very best way possible. So making sure that we're always doing research, we're always looking at what we're doing to try and do it as the best we can, and then also using research to get other opportunities. A couple of slides in my presentation was talking about stormwater. It's a big growth area in our industry, but showing that because trees have a very positive impact on stormwater, how we're getting now funded by our Department of Environmental Protection, to actually build these supersized tree pits that they call sidewalk bioswales. but they can help collect stormwater, or at least slow stormwater going into our drain systems. And also how we're building what we call green streets, but a little what they call pint-sized parks, little parks in kind of areas of disused roadway to actually collect stormwater. So, you know, again, we're just using research to show that trees have a positive impact in maybe in something that we haven't thought that much about before. And now we're using that to get funding to plant more trees, to maintain trees. So again, I just wanted to, my presentation does focus on, you know, exploiting as many opportunities as we can to show that trees are doing a positive things, to get credit for that, and using that credit to get resources, and then continue doing research. So you're a research-driven program to hopefully make your urban forestry program as strong, as sustainable as it can be. And so, you know, in my own position as a civil servant, or as someone who works for the public, is to ultimately make sure that I'm doing the best job I can, or my division is doing the best job as we can, to maximize the benefits we get as a community from the resources that are invested in us. And I just wanted to say that, you know, I do, when you hear about, you know, or we read my paper, that what I talk about is the work of a division of 100 people, and particularly in forestry, 40 people. It's not just me here. We're a very large team, and there's an awful lot of going on. And I think the final thing I was going to talk about, which I'm very excited about, is urban tree canopy. We've had a LiDAR project done recently in the city, looking at a canopy cover and making sure that we're able to know what canopy we've got. And we're able to monitor it, and we're going to have to keep repeating that over time so we can see, you know, are we going forward? Are we increasing urban tree canopy, or are we decreasing urban tree canopy? I think that everyone should be aware of the urban tree canopy equation. So your baseline urban tree canopy, your tree planting, your tree growth, take away trees that are removed, you know, and us as urban foresters, are we moving forward? Are we increasing urban canopy, or are we, you know, losing urban tree canopy? And, you know, we really need to know that as urban foresters. So we know, you know, what our challenges are, where our opportunities are to increase urban tree canopy. And again, using all that information quantified to talk to policymakers, so trees become an essential part of the urban environment. And, you know, you're not there fighting to keep the tree because it's in the way, because they want to do this, that, and the other. But people are actually coming to you and making, you know, want to know how they can preserve the tree because they understand it's such an essential part of their project and the city as a whole.
Yeah. What I wonder is, one of my last questions is, when you lose so many trees, I have to put on the back again. My question is, when we have a storm here in the Netherlands, we used to talk about the loss of a certain number of trees, and I wonder, when you talk about the loss of trees, do you also count the loss of the financial loss? Is that a topic in New York, based on the iTree system and the way you calculate the value of trees?
Well, as you know, I'm sure you know, Jan-Willem, but you know, within iTree, the valuation system is, you know, the CTLA, the Council of Tree and Landscape Appraisers. We, outside of iTree, apart from using iTree for quantified environmental benefits, we don't use the quantified environmental benefits really to justify individual trees. We still will use a CTLA system to actually value a tree. But one thing we've worked hard on here, and we actually now have a new local law, and we have very strong what we call restitution requirements. So if you as a individual want to remove a street tree or a public tree because of a project, you obviously you have to justify to us that that's necessary. There's no way to save that tree, and then you have to reimburse the city for the cost of that tree. So you know, we use you know, species, size, condition, and location to make a valuation. Even though we use the trunk formula method, which I'm sure many of the people there will know what that is, and that's a system that's in the current edition of the CTLA guide. We've modified it to be more appropriate for what we're looking for in New York City. So we altered the species valuation. We actually used environmental benefits to, we look at trees based on their size and how long they last, so longevity. So we value trees on how big they get and how long they last as a way of kind of quantifying environmental benefits, I guess. And then we've modified location because I don't know how familiar people are with location in CTLA, but we wanted to make sure that trees that may be on a block with no other trees, that's a great place for a tree, because we want trees to be in those locations, and they shouldn't suffer or be valued lower because the buildings around them are not of high, because it's not outside of a very expensive home or on a very nice street, but they're in a very quiet and poor neighborhood. We want to value those trees highly because of the environmental benefits they provide. So, we do value trees here using CTLA, but we value trees based on, we don't give people dollar figures, we give people number of 3-inch replacement trees. So you might come to me and say, I want to remove this tree. You prove to me that there's no other way to do your project without removing it. And then you have to provide the city restitution. And that restitution, in the first instance, will be in the number of 3-inch trees. So I might say to you, hey, Jan-Willem, you have to give the city 25 3-inch trees for this tree you're removing. I'll give you the locations. You have to plant the trees and guarantee them that they will survive for at least 2 years. I could then say to you, hey, you can pay the city to plant the trees for you, but that'll cost you about $1,700 a tree at current rates. So that's an awful lot of money. So you might be able to do it cheaper. But ultimately what I'm trying to say is that we make sure that we get restitution for trees that are removed. We get that restitution in terms of young trees. And, hopefully by doing that, we maintain, like I just spoke about, urban tree canopy. We make sure that our urban tree canopy is still going up and not going down.
Yes.
And that's kind of how we do it in New York. But it's a constant challenge. And, urban tree canopy and urban tree canopy loss is really, our game is, can we increase it or are we losing urban tree canopy? So it's very exciting, but proper valuation is key to make sure that people understand the value of trees. And, if you put a good high value on a tree and you say, hey, Jan-Willem, if you want to remove this tree, it's going to cost you this amount of money. So it might be worth, thinking about your project and maybe you can, redesign it. So again, it makes sure that people are aware that this isn't just something that we can just remove. It's going to cost you an awful lot of money to remove that tree. So it might be worth spending a little bit more money preserving it. And that's, as my role as Director of Tree Preservation, is it's trying to make sure people understand that it's worthwhile preserving trees and protecting them.
Yeah, I think we have enough topics to discuss about next year. Yeah? You hopefully are able to join us and we can share our experiences. I would like to thank you very much for this pleasant conversation. We are gathered here with a lot of colleagues, about 200 colleagues today here. And I'm sure that every one of them sympathize with you, whether you are a tree worker, or you are a manager over maybe 1,000 trees, or just like you, over 5 million trees. We really understand what that this situation engages you. It must be horrible to face the loss of such a number of trees. But on the other hand, and that's in my opinion maybe even more important, that your country, and in particular the East Coast, is hit very hard by this storm. People lost their lives, lost their property, and combined with, you mentioned it already, the financial crisis, this situation needs brave men who have the courage and the persistence to rebuild what is destroyed. And we all wish you all the best in your job to achieve that. And you told me for the next weeks you have to work very hard. At least until the 10th of November, you have to work almost 24/7. So it will be very tough times. And yeah, thank you again. And we all understand that it wasn't possible for you to join us. And hopefully we will meet next year. Yeah.
I very much hope so. And again, I very much apologize. I was very looking forward to meeting people. I'm sorry I look a bit tired. It's a lot of stress and a lot of work. But, we're doing the best we can. But, I would say to everyone there as well, is if you do manage a tree population, do plan for the worst. You know, it's part of a comprehensive risk management program, and make sure you have you know, contracts in place, emergency contracts in place. You have a system to, you know, get reports of tree damage processed and to contractors. And I would say that, you know, in New York, we didn't, you know, only because of the last 3 years where we're having all these big events that have created so much damage have we now been properly prepared, because we've never seen anything like this before. So I would say to all of you,